Hi, and welcome to Noble Character Crafts. My name is Amy, and I'm coming to you from eastern Nebraska, where I live with my husband and our 5 children. Today is Friday, August 8th, 2025. A huge welcome to any new or returning viewers. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you really enjoyed this episode. This is a channel all about my crafty life, and today I have knitting and crocheting to share with you all. I will have links to the places that you can find me in the description box below, as well as the show notes for this episode. I have a few finished objects to share with you all today. The biggest one is this toddler, big girl, I should call it, big girl blanket that I crocheted for a little girl that I go to church with, and she is going to become a big sister later on this year for the first time, and I thought it would be fun to make her a special gift to welcome the new baby in their family, so that, you know, the baby will get showered with new gifts, and I thought it'd be fun for her to get a special gift since she's becoming a big sister. So I wanted to join in the Flower Power Make-Along that Yeji of Handmade Co. and Christy of Mimi Grace Designs were hosting in the month of July, and so I started this project on July 2nd. I had a bunch of DK weight 100% acrylic yarn in my stash. Most of it was left over from previous blankets that I've made. I'll go ahead and pop in pictures. I've made 2 baby blankets using a lot of this yarn before. The beginnings of this yarn collection was some Dara Moore's Studio anti-pilling DK weight yarn, which I made this blanket out of. Then with the leftovers that I had from that blanket, plus some Knit Picks Brava yarn that I received from my cousin that was marked as sport weight, but I think it was mismarked and it's actually DK weight according to the yardage. Anyway, she had gifted me quite a few different bright colors of that yarn, and I used that along with my leftovers from the previous blanket to make this blanket. And then I still had leftovers of that Dara Moore's Studio yarn, and a lot of that went into this blanket, as well as a lot of the Knit Picks Brava yarn, plus one other skein of Baby Bee Sweet Delight prints in the kitty colorway, which is this one here. Anyway, so I used 8 different colors in this blanket, and I used a pattern from this book called A Year of Afghans 1998, and the pattern is called Floral Sampler. It does not have a designer listed on here, and I couldn't find it online, so I'm not sure who the designer is for this pattern. But the original pattern here calls for you to make 3 different motifs, which are labeled motif A, B, and C. I followed the pattern for motifs A and B, but I tried making motif C, which is the one that has the flower, like this one here. And I didn't like how that looked. It didn't lay very well for me when I crocheted it. So I modified the 3rd motif and used a pattern from my beloved Crochet Kaleidoscope book by Sandra Ng. And I used motif number 70, but I did modify this as well. But there's a picture of that motif. And I just made it uses a popcorn stitch in the center, and I reduced the popcorn stitching to only have 3 rounds instead of 4 rounds, which is what is called for in this original pattern. So I made the popcorn stitch section a little bit smaller. So let's see. This is the pattern for motif A. This is motif B. And then here's the modified number 70 from the Crochet Kaleidoscope pattern. I followed the instructions in the Floral Sampler blanket for the layout of the hexagons and the number of hexagons. I was thinking about making it shorter, but I did end up making the total number of hexagons. So that meant I made 25 of motif A and then 21 of motif B and the modified Motifs-y. Total. The original pattern calls for worsted weight, and I used DK weight, but I did not change my hook size. I still use the recommended 4mm hook size, which seems a little bit odd because normally with worsted weight you wouldn't use such a small hook. So anyway, since I was using DK weight, I kept the 4mm because I thought that was appropriate. I started this on July 2nd, like I said, and then I finished it on August 5th. So it took me just a little over a month to make this. I was super into this blanket. I was enjoying the process of making this so much. And so, yeah, it just really kept me motivated to continue working on this. So I was able to work it up pretty quickly considering that it's, you know, a pretty good sized blanket. The final measurements are 36 inches by 58 inches. That's from tip to tip. Since it's a hexagon, it has, you know, tips that go out. So I went from the widest part of the width and the height. I will stand up in a minute to show you how it looks in its entirety. But first I wanted just to go over a few more details. So once I finished all of the motifs, then I laid out all the hexagons, and it took me a while to arrange them just right how I wanted them. So that, you know, I didn't want to have colors that were too close together that were matching and so forth. I wanted the colors to be dispersed pretty evenly. Oh, I did completely run out of this purple colorway, which is Knit Picks Brava in the Lady Slipper colorway, and that was my favorite, but I ran out of that one. I did not run out of any of the other colors though. And anyway, so I used mattress stitch to join all of the motifs together, and that went well. That went pretty quickly, really. And then I did modify the border. The original pattern calls for you to do reverse single crochet around the border of the blanket. I'm not a huge fan of that stitch. I've tried it many times and it never looks great in my opinion. I have seen it on other people's projects and I think it looks really cool, but whenever I try to do it, I just don't like how it looks on my projects. Maybe I'm just not great at that stitch because I haven't practiced it a lot because I don't like how it looks. Anyway, I just decided to do a double crochet stitch all along the edge, nice and simple. And I had the most of this color, which is one of the Daremore's Studio Anti-Pilling DK yarns in the powder colorway, I believe. So I just did double crochet all the way around, and then on the corners I did 2 double crochet, chain 2, 2 double crochet. So on each of those little peaks I did that, and then when I got to the valley between hexagons I skipped a couple of stitches, as you can see there. So it followed, you know, the border of the blanket nicely. I think that covers everything for the details of this. I hope so. So I'll go ahead and stand up so you can see how it looks in its entirety. Maybe I will hold it this way. There, that will show on the screen a bit better. I can't really hold it up very well, but you get an idea of how big it is, I suppose. So I'm 5'10", and if I stretch out my arms, I can kind of, it's a little less than my wingspan, I suppose, because I'm stretching it in as I hold it like this. So it's not huge, which is great because the little girl is still quite young. But I think it's so fun, and I love the bright colors and the different motifs, how, you know, I just think it's really fun that there's 3 different motifs, and so it's really interesting to look at. I hope that this will be a treasured blanket for her, and that it will, yeah, I hope she loves the bright, fun colors in it. I think it's great, and I really enjoyed making it. So I'm excited to gift this to her later on this year. I also finished these socks that I have been working on for a little while. I did not show these off on my last episode because I hadn't worked on them in between the previous episode. Well, I hadn't worked on them for a while. I put them aside for a little while. So anyway, I picked them back up within the last couple of weeks and finished them up. This is the newest pattern from Kayla Litton of Crazy Sock Lady Designs. This is the Vanilla Bean socks. And I really enjoyed working these up. It's a super fun, easy pattern. easily memorizable. I did modify the pattern a little bit because I cast on 60 stitches. Her pattern has a 56 stitch count, 64 or 72, but I, just for my socks, I found that using a 60 stitch count on my socks fits my foot the best. So I cast on 60 stitches using US 0 2mm needles and did 2x1 ribbing. So I also modified the ribbing because the original calls for knit 2, purl 2 ribbing. But since I had 60 stitches, it works a little bit better to do 2x1. So knit 2, purl 1 ribbing for 20 rounds. And then the stitch pattern is a 4-row repeat, and I changed once I finished the ribbing, then when I went into the patterning, I worked one pattern repeat using a contrast color and then a pattern repeat in the main color, and did that for a total of 3 contrast color stripes at the top, which I thought was fun to do. And then I knit the leg for, I believe, a total of, I think probably 70 rounds total. That's what I usually do, so close to that, whatever. I guess 4 doesn't go into 70 evenly, so it was probably 68 I probably did. I did the heel just as the pattern instructs, pretty much, I'm sure. I usually follow Kayla's patterns for heels and toes especially, so that is what I did. I did add in a slip stitch section on the ball of my foot, which I typically do for my own socks because that just adds a little bit of reinforcement to that section of my socks, which is where I tend to wear holes in my socks most quickly. So it's very similar to what you would do on a heel flap. Once I get to 30 rows before my toe decreases, I add in this slip stitch section for the last 30 rows of my foot. The way that I do that is on the ball of the foot, on the bottom of the sock only. I slip one, knit one across for 1 round, and then the second round I knit all the stitches, and I repeat those 2 rounds for a total of 30 rounds before I do my toe decreases. The beautiful yarn that I used for this pattern is Suburban Stitcher sock yarn in the Boardwalk colorway, which is fingering weight 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon. And the contrast color is Hazel Knits Blueprint and Seattle moPOP. That's an 80% superwash merino, 20% nylon base. And that was a little mini that my cousin gifted to me. I started these on July 1st and finished them on August 5th. Let's see. I think that covers it. Super, super fun pattern. I highly recommend it. And I'm sure I will be revisiting this pattern again because it was just a really easy, fun, textured pattern to work up. I love the speckles in this yarn. It was so much fun to work with. I got that yarn a long time ago though, so I don't know if that's a regular colorway for Suburban Stitcher or not, but I really enjoyed working with it. Another project that I worked up very quickly for the Flower Power Mal that I mentioned earlier was a little pot holder. I found this free pattern online called the Vintage Flower Pot Holder by Nicky Jones. And I thought it was so interesting and beautiful. And I had never made anything with this type of construction before. I started this on July 24th and finished it the next day on July 25th. I used fingering weight yarn, Knit Picks Simply Cotton Fingering in the Bear colorway for the main part, and then that's a 100% organic cotton base. And then for the seafoam color, I used Knit Picks Comfy Fingering in seafoam, and that's 75% Pima cotton, 25% acrylic. And I used a 2.5mm hook. So this pattern has you make 2 of these exact pieces. You start from the center and work a regular crochet circle for the center section. And then you cut the blue or the middle colored yarn, whatever color you use, and switch to the petaled color. And you work up those sections using some like shell stitches basically. And then when you're all done with all the petals, then you add the contrast color back in and you crochet around each end, and then you do a slip stitch down and back up again in between each petal. And that joins the two pieces together as you do that. So it's a really cool construction. The pattern was not very clear in a couple of sections. I've been crocheting for 25 years or more than that. I always forget. I think I learned how to crochet in 2000. So yeah, about 25 years. So I was able to figure out what was supposed to be written, but I could tell there were a few missing steps. So if you're a very beginner crocheter, it might be a bit confusing. And also doing these slip stitches, they call for you to be really loose with your stitches, and that was a bit tricky to be really loose because the slip stitches tend to tighten up as you move on to the next stitch. It kind of tightens up on its own. And I found that even though I was trying to keep my stitches really loose, it still was kind of tightening up a little bit more than I was hoping it to, but I blocked it and laid it flat, and it blocked out really well because the petals were kind of curling or kind of cinching in after I did those slip stitches, and I was afraid it was going to be too tight, but it blocked out really well. There are directions for adding in a loop on the pattern, but I just did my own thing. I just did let's see, I did make a note of it. I chained 10 and then did 10 single crochet stitches into that loop, just to have something to hang it with. I'm going to save this for a gift. I don't know for who, but I'm just going to add it to my gift pile because I think it would make a really sweet gift at some point. Maybe like a housewarming gift or something like that. I thought it was really sweet. I could definitely see coming back to this pattern as well because it was so fun to make, and I think it's so beautiful. And it's nice and thick since it's double layered. So you could use it to even grab a pan out of the oven. It would be, it would protect your hand enough, I think, for that. Or you could just use it as a trivet too. It's really pretty. Or just wall decor because it's so pretty. And one more finished object, which was super quick. I crocheted myself this little glass cozy, primarily for the purpose of marking my glass from everybody else's in the house, because we have a few of these glasses that are matching. And well, there was one day when my son grabbed the same glass as me, and we both had glasses on the counter, and I didn't know whose was whose. And so I thought, I'm just going to make myself a little cozy so that I know this is my glass of water. So I used some more of the Kraemer Tatamy DK weight yarn that I've used for a couple of projects recently, and it's in the Playtime colorway. It's 45% cotton, 55% acrylic. It was gifted to me by a viewer of this channel. I used a 3.5 millimeter hook. I made this on July 28th, and I just did a simple circle. I didn't follow a pattern. I just made up my own thing. So again, I just used a simple circle construction for the beginning of the glass, or the cozy at the bottom of the glass, and then just did double crochet stitches. Well, I did, like a turning round, so I crocheted only into the back loop to kind of turn my work around the edge here, and I just kept trying it on my glass to make sure it would fit. Then I did a few V stitches, which you can see, and kind of crocheted in between the V stitches on the next row, then went back. Well, I did that for a few rows and then went back to just double crochet, and I think I finished it up with a single crochet round at the top. Okay, those are all of my finished objects, so I'll go on to my works in progress. Last time I recorded an episode, I was working on the second gnome that I am knitting for my mom's friends, and I was working on the hat for the second one, and I finished that. So this pattern is Someone to Write Gnome About by Schira. I started this on July 20th. For the hat, the original hat, I believe, I'm sure it is, made with self-striping yarn. And the first gnome that I made, which is just outside of the frame here on my shelf over here, this one, the hat, is made with self-striping yarn. But for this second one, I didn't have any self-striping yarn in the colors that my mom wanted for the second one. So she wanted red and gray and white, pretty much. So anyway, I just grabbed a few different scraps from my stash and did my own striping sequence. And I tried to follow the same striping sequence from the first hat that I made for that first gnome. So I won't go over all of the colors, but there are 8 different colors that I've striped into this hat, and I think it turned out really cute. And I am working on the body of the gnome right now. It's being held in this bag that was gifted to me by the Bead Sisters podcast a long time ago. And I am using some thrifted yarn by Bûches, Le Petit Lambswool, which is 100% lambswool, in the, is there a colorway? Medium gray, it says. And I'm just working on the body of the gnome. It is knit from the bottom up. So I'm just working in the round, basically. I'm doing magic loop though. And that is being knit on US 1 2.25 millimeter needles, which the hat was as well. So I don't know, that's working out pretty well. I am not working on it that much. I have quite a few different works in progress, and I feel like I'm not making a ton of progress on anything because of that, but that's okay. All right, my next work in progress, which is another one that I feel like is taking forever to work up. But again, I'm working on too many things at once, I suppose. But it's being held in this beautiful bag that was made by Susan of Delightful Works. I am making Aeron's Sweater. I still haven't looked up how to pronounce that designer's name. Why do I keep forgetting to do that? I've said that so many times. I'm sorry, but I don't know how I would say that name. I'm sorry. I'll just put it at the bottom of the screen. Anyway, I have made a little bit of progress, not a ton, it doesn't seem like, but last time I recorded, I was down here right near the edge, or the hem. There's a bit of grass on it. I don't know how that happened. Anyway, there is a beautiful progress keeper on here that was stitched for me by Erica of the Rose Opal Knits podcast. And so I just did a couple more rounds of the half fisherman rib pattern that this pattern uses before I started the ribbing. And then that's just a 1x1 ribbing for the bottom hem. I started this on June 20th, so it has been on the go for quite a while for a baby sweater. I'm making the 12-month size. I'm using US 4 3.5 millimeter needles for the body of the sweater, and then US 2.53 millimeter for the ribbing. I did a sewn tubular bind off, which is not called for in the pattern, but I really enjoy doing that type of a bind off, especially with 1x1 ribbing. I think it looks nice and is easy to do. Then I am following the instructions, and it calls for you to go ahead and do the neckband next. So I did that. It is a double folded neckband, and then I don't believe I'm pretty sure I've never done this before. I have made a double folded neckband before, but I believe that one was stitched down with a sewing needle. And this time the instructions call for you to do to knit it together. So you knit the collar for twice as long as it needs to be. Halfway through you do a purl row so that it folds easily on that purl row. And then when you're done with it, you bind off and attach it to the original row. There's really clear instructions on how to do that effectively and to make sure it's extra stretchy, which this is, so that's nice. It's got a lot of stretch in it. And anyway, that went really well, and I think it looks beautiful the way it's attached together. So I'm really happy with the neckband. And I have started the first sleeve. There are some short rows on the sleeve, which, you know, I wanted to do that all in one sitting so that I wouldn't get off on my stitch count, but it went well. and it looks great. So now I'm just working in the round with the half fisherman's rib. And yeah, it seems to be going pretty well. The yarn that I'm using for this is also Knit Picks. It's Swish DK in the Blossom Heather colorway, which is 100% fine superwash merino wool. And then, as I've shown before, I'll continue to show this picture. I am planning on embroidering her name on the front of the sweater once it's done. I'm so thankful that a couple of viewers have sent me links to different tutorials showing how to stitch the name effectively. And I'm so grateful for those of you that have sent me those tutorials, because I was really not sure how I was going to do that. So I'm very grateful for that. And I'm going to be following some of those tutorials to hopefully do an effective job of stitching her name onto the front of it when I'm all done. All right. My next work in progress is another baby sweater that I shared on my last episode. It's being held in this bag that I made myself. And this is called the Kalisto Cardigan, Baby Cardigan by Agnes Brandels. It's a free pattern. I started this on July 20th. Last time I recorded, I was working on the body of the sweater, which is knit from the bottom up. The original pattern calls for the button band to run along the left side of the cardigan, along the raglan, and then down the side of the cardigan. I originally started this sweater making the smallest size, which is a 0 to 3 month size, but my gauge is a little loose and it's turning out to be the measurements of the 9 to 12 month size. So I thought that since it was going to go to an older child, that the side button band might be a little awkward because the child will at least be crawling, and if it's not buttoned, then it's going to hang open funny and the one side's going to be too big flopping over, and then it's going to get into the child's way, I thought. Or even if they're already walking, it'll still be weird if it's not closed. And so it's kind of, I thought it would be more useful to have a cardigan that could be left open. You know, you could just throw on the child and it's not going to flop around weird. So I talked in my last episode how I was hoping to be able to modify the pattern to adjust the button band to go down the front center of the cardigan instead of along the side. And I was able to do that. I just, you know, when you get to the point where you're separating for the sleeves, it calls for you to just, I think, cast off stitches for the one sleeve and then knit across the front stitches and then cast off for the second sleeve and knit across for the back stitches or something like that. So I just split the front stitches in half. I think how it was the front stitches were an odd number and the back stitches were an even number. So I just flipped one stitch to the back so that the back was an odd number of stitches and then had an even number for the front and split those evenly. Anyway, it was pretty easy to do. You do 1 by 1 ribbing for a little bit, not much of ribbing, and then it's got this beautiful textured pattern, which I just love so much. It's very simple, it's just knit and purls, but it is really pretty, I think. There's a progress keeper here that I got from Yeji of And Made Co. for the Flower Power Make Along. That's marking where I was last time I recorded. Here you can see the sleeve stitches are there where I bound those off. This section is just on hold right now according to the pattern instructions. And I am knitting the sleeves. The yarn that I'm using is, I love this cotton in the Dove colorway, which is worsted weight 100% cotton yarn. And I'm knitting the sleeves 2 at a time. And they are also bottom up. So I did the 1 by 1 ribbing for a little bit again, and then the sleeves are just done in stockinette. And I have done 3 increase rounds. Those are marked with these stitch markers. I need to do 3 more increase rounds, and then the rest of the sleeve will just be plain knitting, so that will be nice and easy. The needles I'm using are US 3.25 millimeter needles, which are a lot smaller than what is recommended in the pattern, and yet I'm still getting quite a loose gauge because I'm such a loose knitter. I think that is it for that pattern. Oh, I'm also adding button holes which is not called for in the pattern. The pattern calls, I think, for you to use snaps, and I'm not a fan of snaps. So I've just added buttonholes every second pattern repeat, which is a total of 16 rows in between each buttonhole, I believe. I'm pretty sure that's right. Anyway, just a simple yarn over knit two together for a buttonhole every 16 rows. Okay, that I think covers that project. The next one is being held in another bag that I sewed myself, and it is the stripy socks that I am knitting and also recording a tutorial for my YouTube channel here that I'll eventually publish, showing how I knit my socks 2 at a time. I haven't made a ton of progress on these because these are really my only mindless travel project that I can take on the go. And so I don't work on them unless I need a project like that. So I haven't made a ton of progress. Last time I recorded an episode, I had just finished the cuffs. And so I've just done a few stripes in that self-striping colorway. So I'm using the same yarn that you saw in that first gnome that I made. I cast on 60 stitches using US 02mm needles again. I used Knit Picks Stroll Fingering in the Paisley Heather colorway for the cuffs and did 2x1 ribbing for 20 rounds. And then for the main color, I am using Paint Box Yarns Socks in the Stripes Candy colorway and just doing plain stockinette. I will do about 70 rounds again for the legs, or however the stripes work out. You know, I want to start the heel flaps at a color change, so whatever is closest to that probably. So I've recorded so far how I cast on my socks and, you know, arrange my stitches to work them 2 at a time on magic loop. And then I've quickly shown how I did my ribbing a couple of rounds, I think. And then I also recorded a quick little bit of me starting the self-striping yarn to make sure that my stripes match. And so I'm just going to continue knitting through these until I get to the heel flap, where then I'll record that section as well. So it might take me a while to get that tutorial finished because, like I said, I'm not working on those a ton, only when I need to go, you know, out of the house and take a project along with me usually. I'll take those with us. Okay, another work in progress that I haven't shown off in a while, I've put it on hold for a little bit, is another afghan that I'm making using another one of these Leisure Arts publications. This is A Year of Afghans, book 5. This was published in the year 2000. And I am crocheting the pattern called Garden Romance. Here's a picture of it. I'm using some more yarn that was gifted to me by Nicky, one of the viewers of this channel. I am using a 5mm hook. I started this several weeks ago, or a couple of months ago probably, I should say. On May 31st I started this. Nicky gifted me 3 different colorways of some Karen, I believe Simply Soft yarn that she got from some sort of a discount warehouse type of thing, it looks like. The label, the bag that the yarn came in didn't have a Karen label on it, but she let me know that it is Karen yarn. Anyway, she sent me 3 colorways, and I have an even amount of each of those colorways, and I thought it would be perfect to work up into this blanket. It's being held in this beautiful bag that I thrifted a while ago. And I haven't made a ton of progress on this since I showed it to you last. Like I said, I have had it on hold. But since I finished that afghan, the toddler afghan, then I picked this back up and have worked a few rows on it. It's so pretty. I really love it. I don't think I ever would have picked these colors on my own, but I love how they look together. So there's this beautiful cranberry color, and then the variegated color is so interesting. It has gold, orange, gray, blue, and white in it. And so I'm just following that color repeat of doing the cranberry, the variegated, and then that pretty orange color. And I'm following the pattern for the recommended times to switch yarn colors, which is every 2 rows. But in the original pattern, I believe there's 4 colors in the blanket, and I'm only using 3. There is a progress keeper right here that I was gifted by a friend named Abby. And so I've just done a few rows since I've shown it to you last, but like I said, it's been several episodes since I've shown this off. It's just a 1 row repeat, super easy and memorizable and enjoyable. I love it a lot. I have started sewing in a few of the ends, but not a ton. I sewed in a few right here, but I have quite a few at the beginning and quite a few more now since I've worked on it some more. That's kind of funny that I did that way, but anyway, I have sewn a few of them in. I a lot of times will crochet over my ends, but this pattern, it wouldn't work very well to crochet over the ends, and this yarn is pretty slippery, so it works better to sew them in. But I really like that work in progress as well. It's so enjoyable. It's one of the ones I can pick up when I am tired and I don't really want to concentrate on what I'm doing so much. And I just started another project yesterday. I was trying to hold off on starting any more projects, but I just couldn't help myself. I wanted to start another project using up some more of the yarn that I have left over from the blanket, because this yarn is just never ending, it seems. So I still have the yarn that I'm using for this project is this bright orangey, well, it's called Seashell. It's such a bright neon peachy orangey color. I love it. Anyway, I have quite a bit of that left. I didn't weigh it, but it's a pretty good sized skein there. And I still have all of this yarn left over too from that blanket. So not a ton, but enough to make a few more things. So anyway, I found a free pattern called Tanya the Fish Amigurumi by Mariska Voss Bollman. And I thought it was so cute. I'll put a picture of it here because you're not gonna be able to tell what it is from what I've done so far. But so cute, such a cute little pattern. And I don't know why, but I saw, you know, this color I just love so much, but I thought it would be fun to make something with it, but I couldn't think of what could be this color. It's such a unique color, and I thought, oh, it'd be really cute as a fish. So I looked for some fish patterns and I found this one. So I've just, I have a row counter on here to keep track of where I'm at, so I'll take that off. Anyway, I've just worked the nose, the face part, I guess, of the fish. And it's all done using single crochet stitches. I'm using a very small hook, a 2.75 millimeter hook. And again, this is probably DK weight. So this one is Knit Picks Brava. It's labeled as sport weight, but there's only 273 yards for 100 grams. So I think that's DK weight. It's a pretty thick, I don't know if you can tell just by looking at it, but it's a pretty thick yarn. And this is in the seashell colorway. And again, 2.75 millimeter hook. So I'm getting a really, really nice tight gauge, which is of course what you want for amigurumi. And it's very well written, very easy. It's just kind of a typical circle construction, and then you do a few plain rounds and then some more increasing. So I'm just following the pattern completely for this one, except the original pattern calls for sport weight yarn. I can't remember what size hook, a little bit smaller hook, I believe. Anyway, it's going really well, I think. I'm enjoying it so far. The original pattern, as you can see, has stripes. I'm not going to be doing stripes. I'm just going to make this in the plain color. Just this solid color. I think I'll have enough. I'm pretty sure. I'll even have leftovers probably. I thought it would also be really fun once I finish this first one. I'm planning on following, you know, the instructions except for the striping for this first one. And then I'm thinking about making a second one, but making it longer. I am in the middle of watching the most recent episode from Ashley of Paper Crane Yarns. I think her channel's called, or Paper Crane Knits. Anyway, she has she made, I think on her last episode or maybe 2 episodes ago, she had shown off a sewn fish pillow pattern that she had made. And it's a really long, it's a good sized fish pillow. It's kind of long and narrow. And I thought that would be super, I love the looks of that, but I thought I could maybe crochet something like that. Just follow this, but instead of decreasing as soon as the pattern calls for, just keep crocheting the fish to be longer. So I think I want to try that, using up some more of those leftovers so I could make it kind of stripy. We'll see. We'll see if I do that or not, but that's my initial thoughts. I'm just holding this in this, another thrifted basket here. Okay, those are all of my works in progress, but I did receive a few gifts since I recorded last, so I wanted to share those. Firstly, I wanted to mention that I had mentioned on my last episode that I was going to be taking the gnome that I showed to our county fair. I did that along with several other things. I also entered this potholder, and everything did really well. The baby sweater, I think it's a baby cardigan. I think I showed that off 2 episodes ago, pretty sure. That won a special prize for the best baby article. I don't think I've even gotten a picture of that yet. But maybe I can grab a screenshot from that last episode when I shared that as a finished object. Because I don't have it in my possession right now, because I have for the first time decided to enter a few things into our state fair. So I'm excited about that. For next year, for our county fair, I've been asked to help out as one of the co-supervisors for the needlework category. I'll be kind of overseeing the fiber arts section, and my co-supervisor is a sewist, and so she'll be overseeing the sewing and quilting section more than, we're kind of dividing because I have experience, of course, with knitting and crochet, and she has experience with sewing, so we're going to kind of both have our own sections of the needlework category to help out with. So I'm excited about that, but that means I probably won't be entering. I think I can enter my stuff into our county fair even though I'm the supervisor, but I feel like that's a little awkward to be the supervisor and then enter my own things and be eligible for prizes and things. I just don't know. I don't know. I feel a little awkward about that. So I don't think I'll enter my stuff into our county fair while I'm being a supervisor. I don't know how long I'll do that for, but anyway. But I have entered some stuff into our state fair. So I've entered 5 things. One of those is that baby sweater. Then I'll put pictures of the other things. I know I have pictures of everything else. So I've also entered a pair of socks that I knit using the Colorwork Cuff Club by Summer Lee. I've entered a baby blanket that I recently finished. The Juicy Fruits and Whipped Cream pattern by Yarnspirations. I think that is the designer. Maybe there was another designer name. No, Rosanna Beck is the designer of this blanket. And then I've entered my excavation blanket, which I finished last year. You have to finish, well, I think for the state fair, you can enter anything you finished within the last 3 years, but all these items I finished within the last year. That pattern is by Jana Pahota. And then I've also entered my scrappy hexy flower blanket, which I worked on for a long time, but finished within the last year. So those are the 5 things I've entered into our state fair. And my friend Michelle, who lives near me, also enters some things into the state fair. She has more experience with that. And she also conveniently works near the extension office in Omaha. Our state fair is further away. And so she was able to deliver my entries to the extension office so that they can then be sent to the state fair. When I went over to her house to deliver my box of entries, she gifted me some yarn that she had left over from a cardigan that she knitted. And It is Knit Picks Kotlin DK weight in the cerise colorway. This is 70% Tangus cotton and 30% linen. And I think I will knit a baby sweater probably out of this yarn. So thank you so much again, Michelle, for that, and for also helping me out to answer a lot of questions about entering my stuff into the state fair and helping to deliver my box to the office. And then I also received a gift from a viewer of this channel. I don't think I will mention her first name because on her Instagram she doesn't have her first name listed on her Instagram, so I'll just leave that private. But she sent me a copy of this beautiful booklet from Knit Picks called Color Crush, and there are several patterns of crochet wraps in this booklet. The one on the front cover is so pretty. I think I might make that one first. It's called the 3-Stitch Samba, and it is designed by Denise Lavoie. I want to show a better picture of it spread out. Isn't that pretty? I think it's such a fun, pretty design. It uses 3 skeins of fingering weight yarn. So I think that's a really pretty one. And there's another one in here that I love very much as well. It's called the Chevron Pop Shawl, and it is designed by Tian Connaughton. I might be mispronouncing that, but here is a picture of that one. It's so beautiful. I love those bright, fun colors they used. Here's another picture of it spread out a bit. And there is, let's see, I don't know how many total there are. Well, here's a few more on the back that you can see. I didn't count how many there were. Let's see. 6, it looks like. Here's another one that's really pretty, just done in a solid color. That one's got a really beautiful edge. It's quite long and narrow. I don't know if you can see this. Here's another picture of it. I really like that one too. Oh, I guess that was also on the back. Right there. Anyway, I just love this so much. I think it's so fun to have some patterns of crocheted shawls because I typically have knitted shawls in the past. I have crocheted a few, but it's nice to have some beautiful patterns of crocheted shawls as well. So thank you so much again for gifting me this beautiful booklet. I appreciate it so much. So those are all of the things I have to share with you all today. I hope that you enjoyed seeing the things that I've been working on, and I hope that you're really enjoying the projects that you're working on as well. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.